Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Witches of the Moon, Season 11. Can you believe it? Season 11, this is week one. I hope everyone had a wonderful summer solstice. I hope that your summer brings fruition of what you planted in the summer, and that come fall, you harvest the seeds that are growing now within the earth and within the universe for all of those things that you desire. This week, we are going to be discussing our first steps on the Pagan Path. Before I get into that topic, I do want to make a couple of announcements regarding the channel. For those of you that are aware, we lost Quinton last season. He just has a lot going on and was not able to keep up with the commitment of the weekly videos. It was beginning to be too much stress for him, so he put in his resignation with the channel, and we miss him very much. I really liked having Quinton's energy on the channel. However, we did put out a call for audition videos, and we got an absolutely wonderful person. Her name is Isabel. She goes by the Hunter's Apprentice, I believe. And I think that you are really going to enjoy her videos. She'll be taking Quinton's place on Fridays. Then, unexpectedly, we lost Houston as well, which, again, I'm kind of upset about because I really liked having that masculine energy. But in my mind and in my heart, I've been putting out to the universe that a certain individual who'd been a host on the channel previously, I was really wishing that that individual would make a comeback, and guess what happened? That's right. Nimbus River is joining us again this season as a host, and I'm so terribly, terribly excited about that. Now, originally he was going to take Houston's place on Wednesdays. However, Saturdays are better for him, so he will be the Saturday host. And in Houston's place on Wednesdays, we are proud to announce that Jess Spellbound will be joining us as the Wednesday host. I think that you all will learn a lot from her. She's been practicing Pagan for several years and has a beautiful energy that we all loved instantly. So that will be our lineup. Jen and I will still be taking the Monday and Tuesday, and Dia will still be with us on Thursdays. So we're all still here in Nimbus. Picking up all my energy. It was fantastic. But I'm really excited to have the other ladies with us as well. And so I think you're going to enjoy this season. We have a good lineup of topics. Many of the topics that are being discussed this season, some of them have been touched on in some form or other in other seasons, but because they were being requested, we decided to go ahead and carry those forward and cover those topics again, because of course new hosts have new perspectives and new things happen and things change, right? So as you can see, I don't have my usual background. We still are working on taxes. Last year, when you're self-employed, it's super fun doing taxes, and so paperwork is spread everywhere. And I'm in the process, if you saw my video on my personal channel, of putting up a witchy space in one of the upstairs rooms, and so that's why all of my altars are down. They're all upstairs now, and I'm trying to get that space cleared out, cleansed, and set up for that, and hopefully I can resume doing some videos with my nice mandala background. However, I have this lovely calendar that my sister sent me. It says, always chase your dreams that you may catch them. Well, I do try. So, this week's topic, as mentioned, is steps we took when beginning on our pagan path. Now, my meandering to the pagan path was kind of long-winded, so I'm going to try to condense my life experiences into a short video for you guys. My steps on the pagan path really began when I was very, very, very young. We're talking like second, third grade, possibly even earlier than that. What I recall from that time period was having an intense interest in folklore, magic, and witches, particularly Celtic folklore. That was when I first read The Hounds of the Morrigan. I think I read that when I was in fourth grade. It's a thick-ass book, but it's wonderful reading, very easy reading, and I whipped right through it. I would check out every book on myths and folklore and legends, particularly of the Celtic people, because and Native American peoples, because I was exploring my roots at the time, and I have a lot of Irish and Scottish roots, and I have some Native American as well. So digging into that, I was very interested in that very intensely. And so it was around that time we attended a family reunion for my mother's side of the family for the McAleys, and my great-grandmother, whom I've always been told was full-blood Cherokee, woman was very stoic. She didn't smile a lot. My mother was always very uncomfortable around her. I always get the impression that my mother didn't like her grandmother very much. Either one of her grandmothers, actually, because my grandmother's mother, full bitch. She was Irish. Really not a nice person. Very caustic and sarcastic, and that's probably where I get that from. But my great-grandmother taught me how to see visions in fire because we had a bonfire at the family reunion, and she was gazing into the fire, and I kind of came up to her and asked her what she was doing, and so she told me, well, I'm listening to the ancestors, which really took me off guard because my family didn't talk about that kind of stuff very much, especially my mother. I was raised Church of Christ, and so with my mother, anything even close to or akin to witchcraft, big no-no, big no-no. I lived a very sheltered life in that regard. We weren't really allowed to explore other religions or veins of thinking, and so some of what I did when I was younger came to me rather instinctively. A good example would be when I was probably about I guess it was about fifth or sixth grade, actually. No, younger than that, actually, because I had checked out a little book about a little witch. It was called The Sea Witch, I think. I don't really remember. It was just a short kid's book. Basically, it's about this little witch that decides to go sailing, and she gets stuck on the ocean. So she casts the spell to make the wind blow. And I thought this was really cool. So I would go out and recite this spell, and a breeze would blow by every time, consistently. And if there was already wind, it would pick up more. So I showed this to my mother. I was like, hey, Mom, check this out. I learned this from this book that I was reading. And so I remember her just being, this really weird look on her face. And she just kind of like, don't be doing that. So, but she never explained to me why. She said, it's against God. So I was like, oh, okay, fine, whatever. So fast forward a couple of years to about fifth or sixth grade, there was a young guy that I liked quite a bit, but he ended up liking a friend of mine, and they sort of had a thing, and then he kind of dumped her, and so I was like, let's do something to hurt him. And out of instinct, I didn't know what it was at the time, but now I know it was a pentacle. We took white crayon and we drew a big pentacle on the outside porch, the back porch of my parents' house. And she and I recited I came up with a little poem to bring him harm for harming my friend. Lo and behold, this was so weird. A kind of a sudden storm blew in. And as it turned out, he was riding his bike home in the rain, and he fell and broke his leg or his arm, broke something. And I never quite got over that. I always felt very responsible for that. I know I was responsible for that in some way. And part of it was that I was motivated. I was highly energy-wise motivated to zap him for not liking me instead. Of course, if he would have dumped me, I would have been mad too. But, I was not a popular kid growing up. So, it was one of those things. So around that same age, when I was about 11, a carnival came to the city park of my neighborhood. It never came before. It hadn't been back since that I'm aware of. But my two closest friends, Becca and Nancy, they very much wanted to go to this carnival, and I just wanted to get the hell out of my parents' house. I was like, great, let's go. They had a freak show that Becca wanted to see, so we went and saw the freak show, and then Nancy wanted to go to the fortune teller. They had a fortune teller there. So they would not allow us to go in together. We had to wait outside her little tent there. And Nancy was the first one that went in. And when she came out, she was very upset. She would never, ever tell Becca and I what was said to her or during this meeting with this fortune teller. If you're seeing wisps, by the way, I have some lavender incense burning. My husband's been uber negative lately, and so I have some lavender burning to calm the energy in here because I woke up with a massive, massive migraine this morning, and then got to listen to him yell at me the entire morning before he went to work. So I'm trying to calm myself and draw my energy back into the area. So in any case, where was I? Carnival. So then Becca goes in next, and when she comes out, Becca never ever dated in school, ever. Never had a boyfriend, nothing of the sort. She didn't really care for a lot of the people we went to school with. She was a little overweight. And so she comes out and, we asked her, she said, what'd she tell you? And she's like, oh, she told me I was going to meet some guy in an unusual way over great distance and that we would, get married and be very happy. Well, years later, she did end up meeting her first husband online and then moved to California to live with his parents for a time because he was very religious before they got married. And they were very happy until, sadly, Jonathan was killed in a car wreck 5 minutes from their house. He was a wonderful guy. I talked to him on the phone several times and was so looking forward to meeting him. They were planning a trip here to Texas, and I was going to try to be in San Antonio to meet up with them. And yeah, it was not pleasant. So in any case, that was kind of weird how that worked out. So I go in and I sit down and she's like, well, what would you like to know? Now, I was kind of in the heat of my trying to be a good Christian girl. And I was kind of like, man, you're the psychic. You tell me what I want to know. Right? Well, she's like, well, I know what all girls your age want to know. You want to know about love. And she goes, so she's kind of looking at my palm and, running her fingers over my hand. And she, does this whole, crystal ball thing. And she says, I see you marrying a tall, dark man. Now I grew up in San Antonio, which is rife full of a Hispanic population, so marrying a tall, dark man, probably not too far off the general scale, if you know what I mean. So I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. And she said, your relationship will be very tempestuous, but very long. Oh boy, was she ever right. But I'm not going to get into that. So, in any case, I'm like, yeah, okay. And so then she's, asking me some questions about myself and, my life and my family, and I just figured she was probing for information. So I'm like, okay, well, thanks for the reading. It was great. And I got up to leave, and she takes my hand, and she says, wait, I have something for you. Okay. So she comes back with these cards. They weren't in a box. It was just loose cards. And she puts them into my hand, and she puts her hand over mine, and she looks me straight in the face, and she says, you have a gift. You should learn to use it. Now, I had never in my life seen tarot cards, or tarot cards, as my husband calls them. I think he does that to annoy me. And so I had no idea what these were. So I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. These are the weirdest cards I've ever seen. What the devil? Right? But of course, at age 11, you're kind of getting into that rebellious, this is kind of thing. So I was curious about them. So instinctively, I knew to hide these from my mother, but I took them home. I do believe it was a Rider-Waite deck, which, by the way, I do not connect both. We'll get that into that later this season. But I walk out and I ask the other girls, I said, well, what did she give you guys? And they're like, she didn't give us anything, what did she give you? So, we're all looking at the cards, and so I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I went to the local library. Yes, folks, to the local library. This was before the day of Google. And I started looking up these strange cards. The librarian happened to know that they were tarot cards. And so she, she's kind of giving me this look, but she got me several books. And so I'm reading on these cards, and I started to learn how to use them. And I started doing readings for people at school. On up into middle school, I was doing this because my mother was sewing my clothing and dressing me in Garanimals when everyone else was wearing Guess and Jordache. Okay. By the time everyone's wearing Z Cavaricci, it wasn't much better. I was lucky to get dime store jeans. I had one pair of Levi's button-fly 501 blues that I died for that a friend of mine gave me. She was bigger than me, so they didn't really fit me well, but I did not care. I had some Levi's 501 button-fly jeans. For those of you that are of a certain age, you'll remember that Miller's Outpost commercial. Those of you that don't know what Miller's Outpost is, never mind. But in any case, so I had to wear these long skirts that buttoned up the front. My mother bought me petticoats and pantaloons. Yes, folks, petticoats and pantaloons, and hobnail boots. Did I forget to mention that? Your white hobnail boots, gunny sack dresses. So I was tying up the skirts, and I started wearing all these bangle bracelets and tied a bandana around my head at school, and I was all gypsied out, at school, because if I was going to have to dress stupid, I was going to play that shit up, because everybody was making fun of me. They called me Little House on the Prairie. I freaking hated that. Never saw an episode of that show. Still don't care to see an episode of that show. So in any case, that was that. So around that time, I became baptized. I went on a church meeting out of state and was baptized at the church meeting. Came home. My mother was furious with me, which you would think she would be happy about that, right? But no, she was furious with me because she did not think I was mature enough to make this decision for myself to choose Jesus. Jesus is my path. So, but you had to follow Jesus or my mother would kill you. You were not allowed to live in her house. So, what choice did I have? Plus, when you're a kid and you're being told that Christianity is the only way to God, it is, my friends, a religion that leads by fear. I know a lot of Christians will deny that, vehemently say, no. Oh, yes, it does. There is only one way to God. That is through Christ. If you aren't following that, you are a bad person and you are going to go to hell. So, yeah, it rules by fear. And I akin it to brainwashing. But either way, I was getting very gung-ho into this. And around this time, I'd been hiding the tarot cards in the grating, like the venting in my room, which the hot water heater sat over, and there was like an open space underneath. I also kept my diary in there. Well, my dad was doing some work on the hot water heater one day and found my diary and my tarot cards. My mother promptly read my diary, got pissed off about a lot of things I said in there, and then also was like, "What are these? The devil's work." And she wasn't quite that bad, but she was very furious, very upset about the cards. Wanted to know where I got them, how did I learn about these, why are they in her house? She threw them in the fireplace, and I never had another set of tarot cards since, until about 5 or 6 years ago when I was gifted a deck by Amy Webster. So, in any case, so for that period of time, I stepped away from the Pagan Path. I should mention at this point that my family has always been highly clairvoyant, particularly the females in my family. I have predictive dreams. My sister, I believe, has predictive dreams. I'm sure she'll comment and correct me if I'm wrong. She and I used to be able to talk without even speaking. And it would freak my mother out because we would be having a conversation and then either we would both laugh or one of us would say something out loud, and my mother is sitting there watching us kind of freaking out over this, which I don't really understand because my mother was the same way. So I never really understood why she got so upset about our being clairvoyant, because she was clairvoyant. It's on both sides of my family, particularly in the females. Now, I went through a period of trying very, very hard to be a very good Christian because, again, it's a religion that rules by fear, but never really jived with me. I had a lot of questions about the Church of Christ that my mother could not answer. Like, for example, why, if this is the church that Christ established and there's only one church that Christ established, why is it that we can't agree on what certain scriptures mean? Because the church constantly fractures. Brother White and Brother Allen would argue about what this scripture meant, and so they would split off and form their own churches. Well, how can they both be wrong or both be right? My mother could not answer this, and she got very angry at me for asking about this because to her I was being a smart ass. I was not being a smart ass. I had a sincere and honest question, and it infuriated me that she would not answer my question. Well, now I understand that she got angry because she couldn't answer my question. Because I told her, well, how do we know who's right? If each person has their own opinion of what the scripture means, well, we agree with so-and-so. Well, okay, but why do you agree with so-and-so? What makes you think that? And she could not answer me, and she would get very, very angry and said I was being a smart ass and I needed to shut the hell up, basically. And so this very, very much upset me. Plus, it also bothered me that if this was the true Church of Christ, why weren't there churches of Christ everywhere? This was her excuse for not allowing me to serve as a student ambassador to the Soviet Union. I was nominated twice before the wall fell. I was not allowed to be a foreign exchange student to Norway because I would not be able to go to church. Well, if it's the true Church of Christ, then it should be spread throughout the world, right? And I remember one day asking my mother, well, there's Catholic churches in every country around the world. Oh my God. You'd have thought that I said Satanism was on a rise, which it is, by the way, but that's a different topic. She about come unglued. I remember her hand going up and she popped me. And, I mean, that was a distinct memory. So I was like, wow, okay. Well, in the meantime, I'm in high school at this point. My best friend is Catholic. And, she's telling me that, well, I can't go out with you Saturday because I have to go to Mass. I was like, are your parents making you go? And she's like, no, I go to Mass every Saturday night. And that way I'm free on Sunday. And I was like, you go to church on your own without your parents? Well, yeah. And I had been very drawn to the Catholic faith for some reason. I don't know if it was just out of rebellion to my mother, which I don't think it was, because it was a genuine, sincere kind of calling. And so I started looking into the Catholic Church. So then at this point, I'm graduating high school and I'm going to college. And I started talking to the priest on campus because there was a Catholic ministry on campus. And it felt very comfortable to me. I felt very at home. A lot of the questions that I had, they could answer. For example, there wasn't just a sea of white faces in the church, okay? You walk into a Catholic church, you're going to see people of all different backgrounds, all different races, which was another thing that always bothered me about the Church of Christ is why are there only us little group of people? Why isn't it growing, or why is it so stagnant? Why is it just the same people here every week and there's no diversity at all? It bothered me. So when I walked into a Catholic church and I saw a group of diverse people on their knees before God, worshiping, I was like, this is it, man. This is it. And the priest can answer a lot of my questions about, they have a magisterium. So they decide as a learned body what the scriptures mean. And there's no arguing amongst priests about what this scripture means, at least not publicly. The magisterium decides, they speak as a body, everybody abides by it. So I had a lot of respect for that. Plus, they're highly stylized and ritualistic, and they absorbed a lot of pagan practices, including within the Mass itself. And, I'm here to say, and I know that I'm probably going to get reamed over the coals for this by a lot of Christians, especially Catholics, but you cannot tell me that the practice of extreme-unction is not blood magic, okay? They have the bread, they have the wine, the priest speaks the words or the incantation, which he's whispering, nobody hears them, it's priest only, but he speaks these words and suddenly it is the body and blood of Christ. Okay, if that is not blood magic, I don't know what the fuck it is. Now, probably going to get dinged by YouTube for that one, sorry. Now, in the Protestant churches, I will tell you, specifically the Church of Christ, they're very careful to say that it's not the body and blood of Christ. It represents the body and blood of Christ. So they make that differentiation, just so you're aware of that. It sounds like a small, distinct thing, but it is very distinct and meaningful. So there you go. Now, that being said, I lived very happily as a Catholic for 20 years. In fact, I was very gung-ho Catholic, proselytized almost everywhere I went, couldn't help myself. And I was studying to become an apologist for the Catholic Church. And that's when I started learning about the origin of the Bible itself. And again, there were still things that didn't quite jive with me, like their subjugation of women really never set well with me. The fact that Mary was the mother of God, yet she's just a creature herself, that did not make sense to me. How can you be a mother of a god and not be a goddess yourself? That bothered me. And it kind of swirled around in my head. And it also bothered me that, as you study the origin of Judaism and Christianity and Islam, the three faiths of the book, as they're known, or the Abrahamic religions, what came before? Was everybody before them completely wrong? Almost every religion prior to them, with the exception of Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism was the first monotheistic religion to come on the scene. And Freddie Mercury was a Zoroastrian, by the way, for those of you that don't know. It bothered me that, how come men and women shared equal place within the line of being gods and goddesses, and the gods and goddesses were far more human-like in their capacity. So how all of a sudden did we get separated? And only the chosen ones could communicate with God. That bothered me because it took away that personal relationship between you and God. It also set in place a vehicle for release of personal responsibility. The devil made me do it. And I witnessed this a lot in the Church of Christ. So much hypocrisy. It was freaking ridiculous, which was another problem that I really had. And as I started to see more and more of that hypocrisy within the Catholic Church, it soured it for me very instantly. What I loved about the Pagan Path is that it is a path of strong personal responsibility. You own it. You do that spell, you put that out there in the universe, you're responsible. You may not like consequences. There might be unintended consequences, but you are responsible for that, and you need to own it 100%. And that was one of the things that really set me on that path. So I had my cousin, Sunshine Morning Ray, many of you know her as, but Trina Lebofsky. Trina and I had not communicated for many, 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 many years, but I had always just adored her. And I reconnected with her via Facebook and saw that she was a practicing witch, which was something that had always called to me. I'd always kind of been leaning towards. I'd always had an interest in magic and that kind of thing, and old world religions, which I'd started to study again once I got into college, obviously through world civilization and other things, and knowing other people and meeting other people. And so I asked her if I wanted to know more about being pagan, where would I start? And she recommended Raymond Buckland's Big Blue, which I don't think I have it. No, that was in my office. But from there, I got it. I ordered it from Amazon, but I couldn't wait to get it. I wanted to start right away. So I purchased it as a Kindle book and started immediately going through it, worked through all of the exercises in the book, kept a journal for it. In fact, for a lot of the books that I read where I want to learn something from them, I keep a journal because I make notes for myself about what I'm learning. Some of that goes into my Book of Shadows, some of it does not. But definitely I've gained something from everything that I've read, whether I agreed with it or not. And so that was where I started. Then I started connecting with other groups. I started watching Witches of the Moon. I learned a lot from Joey Morris and Tequila. Joey Morris was the one who really kind of showed me that the Morrigan has been present in my life for as long as I can remember. I mean, honestly, blackbirds have always been around me. Birds have always liked me. I loved purple martins and ravens and crows. The raven was, like the big thing during my Poe days. I have an original first edition printing of some of the complete Poe's works. It's a missing volume, but it's still a treasure for me. And one of the few gifts I actually got from my father. But I also, like I said, the Hounds of the Morrigan. Although the Morrigan in that book is the bad guy, I was fascinated by her and her power, and I started doing a lot of reading on her, and she's kind of always been there. I just didn't really realize that she was calling to me that way. And, eventually she stops being subtle and just starts. And so one day I walked out of a day hab where I do some work, and my car was covered in blackbirds, all kinds of corvids. We have ravens, crows, and grackles here, which are all corvids. We have greater grackles and lesser grackles. And so you'll often see the four of those birds together, and my car was covered. Nobody else's car, just mine. And even the guy working at the day hab turned to me and goes, "Well, they like you, don't they?" And I was like, here's your sign. So, I credit Joey Morris for really helping me to realize that that is a calling and that, it shouldn't be ignored. And I have grown so much through reading books from Stephanie Woodfield, and Morgan Daimler's contributed a little. Joey's contributed a lot. So, those were some of my first steps. I started reading and learning and connecting with others in the community. I choose to remain solitary because I'll be honest with you, I just don't click with everybody. And I have a hard time getting along with a group. Plus, I do believe in working skyclad, and I can never do that in front of a group. So, and you really want me to. So, I just personally feel that my relationship with the God and Goddess is very personal and close. So I like the solitary. I like having community and connecting and doing group ritual once in a while. But I because I do see the value in coming together and sharing your energies and raising a cone of power together, which we'll get into later in the season as well. But I really like the one-on-one relationship that I have with my deity now. And so those were the things that brought me to the Pagan Path. I know that this has been rather a long video, and I promise that subsequent videos won't be so long. Some of you may have heard some of this before, or all of this before, because you've watched my channel, or we've talked about this on Witches and Moon before, but there it is. So consistency is key, right, folks? We do so much appreciate y'all watching. We hope you like the lineup. As always, comments and feedback are appreciated. Please be respectful, even if you disagree. And we're always looking for topic suggestions for next season. So if you have anything, shoot over to our Facebook page, which is Moon, and leave us some suggestions there. Give us a like. Don't forget to subscribe, and we hope that you have a wonderful summer season. We look forward to sharing it with you. Thank you.